Hello everyone and welcome to the Melbourne Traditionalists episode 31. I'm Mark Moncrief from Upon Hope and I have with me David Hiscox from XYZ. How are you, David?
Very good, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Now, you were off last week.
Yes.
And I did a podcast without you. Many have said that it's the very best podcast.
I don't doubt them. Yeah.
And so I just wanted to put you the fire under you and
Yes.
make you bring everything you've got.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I better not be away for too long. Yeah.
So I've been looking at XYZ
Yes.
and reading some of the articles that you yourself have written. Very good.
Yeah. Cheers.
And I thought, hey, what a cheek, him putting all this good effort into XYZ instead of into the Melbourne Traditionalist podcast. And so I just hope we can fix that. And from now on, all your good effort comes here. And whatever you got left, XYZ.
I give this one a plug every time I do a live stream. I make a point of saying, we have a shorter discussion. I quite enjoy that. I've actually been thinking about our last discussion from 2 weeks ago.
When we talked about funding and we talked about why the right couldn't win a fight.
Yes. Yeah. Because I find it interesting that this guy on the left has written this article about why the right is sucking at winning the culture war.
Yep.
In particular, I honed in on his one of his comments that what do right wing people do when they get politically active? They start a blog. And it was here that I was just thinking, okay, don't assume that this guy is trying to help us. Because if what we write and say on the internet didn't matter, the left and the establishment wouldn't work so hard to censor us.
And that's true.
Yeah.
But I would say that he is right in that, well, we have done that. You and I are both active and we both have blogs. And he's not saying that we shouldn't do that, or in the article he didn't say that. He said that we should also do other stuff. We should do activism, real world activities.
Which we do and we talked about. But I would still encourage everybody to start up their own blogs and YouTube channels, because the more that we have, the more heads of a hydra that we have. Because the blogs and the YouTube channels are the entry point for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also because we're discouraged from talking about the things that concern us in real life.
Yes.
Often they're people's only escape.
Yes. Yeah, there was a period where I would watch hours of YouTube, or listen to hours of YouTube stuff every day just as I was getting ready for work. And I was basically going through topic after topic and just getting red-pilled on this bit of information, that bit of information. And I think a whole bunch of people did that during sort of 2016 and 2017, and that was that period when there wasn't as much censorship, and so you had these channels with hundreds of thousands of views, and Facebook pages with hundreds of thousands, millions of followers, and it turned the course of Western history. So that stuff, that's absolutely vital. But then, as we were pointing out, that's the starting point, and then from there you realize, okay, everything that I do now is based on the understanding that our current order is based on a lie.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have to basically dedicate ourselves long term to basically ensuring the survival of our people.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and creating networks, forms of creating communities, networks of support for each other, which are all independent of the establishment.
Yeah.
And which can we can either use them to basically keep ourselves alive if the current system doesn't fail, and it keeps us going if the current system does fail. either way, like we need to have our own independent communities, independent networks. The blogs. that's where it all starts.
I do agree, and I mean I write a blog, so I'm certainly not against people having blogs.
Yeah.
I think but we've got to understand the importance of the blogs. And when I started, I started because of Mark Richardson from Oz Conservative.
He inspired you, huh?
Well, yeah, he had his blog, Oz Conservative, which he still runs. And, sometimes he'd write something and I'm like, oh, that's not how I'd say it.
Right.
And then I said to myself, well, if I want to say it, I should say it. And instead of going to his site and, just leaving some message saying, hey, write it better, write it different, write it,
Or putting a wall of text. As comment, yeah.
I decided, hey, I'll start my own.
Yeah.
And so, I thought about that for 6 months and then, bang, did it and kept going. And, Mark Richardson said to me, when you write an article, it really clears your thinking.
Yes. It's like practice, isn't it?
Yeah, it really formulates what's going on in your head. And that's one of the differences between writing and doing what we're doing now in a podcast or a video, where talking is not the same as writing. Because when you put it down in writing, you really have to think about exactly what each word means.
Oh, yeah. I actually find talking harder because, as you can hear what I'm doing here, where I'm just saying stuff.
Yeah.
It's actually hard to get the connection from the brain to the mouth. I can get it from the brain to the fingers. So I see this as practice for, I understand that talking will be important in the future. So that's actually the number one reason I do all this stuff.
Well, exactly. But I mean, it's also good as you've got a different audience. Yeah. And it's a different medium. Some people prefer to read and some people prefer to listen or watch. Yeah. And, so you're getting the different people, and also the way that it's consumed. Sometimes when you're driving to work, you probably can't read a blog post.
Yeah, well,
when you're driving to work, you probably can listen to the Melbourne Traditionalists podcast.
Yeah. So the other reason
and maybe others if you so please.
Others? Oh yeah, there's
that's
Maddie.
what I really.
There's
mean.
Maddie. There's Tim. There's James Fox again. So they're good. The other reason I just wanted to sort of go over what we were talking about 2 weeks ago. I'm wary of ideas being put into the consciousness, into the right, which are deliberately planted there by agents who do not have our best interest.
Well, I'm going to take umbrage at this because
I am paranoid.
That person was me. Right? Because somebody pointed out to me an article that was in a socialist magazine.
Yes.
And I read it and I went, wow, this is actually really, really good. This is really important. Mm-hmm. I should let people on our side know. Okay. So it wasn't that they put it into our media, it's that I went to their media and stole it.
But they knew that it would be read by us, and we would.
I don't know. When you write your articles, do you write it for the random lefty who's going to turn up?
Oh, yes, I do.
Oh, all right.
I actually deliberately put in misinformation, and I will deliberately say things that are a little bit outlandish just to throw the opposition off. I do that. I think in terms of psychological warfare, and I think they do as well.
You see, I always write to encourage our side.
Yes.
So to present information and to enlighten people on our side. Because, a lot of times things that you think are obvious aren't necessarily obvious.
Absolutely, yes.
And then when I go back and think, this is obvious, and then I realise, hey, once upon a time I didn't know this. Maybe it's not as obvious as I assume.
Yeah. I like that about your writing, because it's clear and straight down the line, and what you say is what you mean. With my own writing, there's often what I say, and there's often what I don't say. Yeah. There's often what I mean, and there's often what I don't mean. It's actually like that. And when you look at the way I put in the jokes and the memes and the pictures, like it's all it's almost like it's not fully conscious.
And so I guess that's a different philosophy, because my philosophy is don't pay attention to the other side.
Yes.
Let's do our stuff and let's concentrate on us and building us. And yours is probably more common. Is, hey, take a look over the hedge and see what the other guys are doing.
I guess I sort of see it as normie outreach as well. I understand how my brain has changed over the last 5 years, and I'm trying to help other people change their brains. That's just the way I approach it. So we've both done articles the last few days on domestic violence.
Yes.
Yeah. I loved the fact that like you just came straight out. We put it up on Saturday with regard to the murders committed by Rowan Baxter.
Yep. In Brisbane.
Yes. Yep. So Rowan Baxter, he burned his family alive in the car, and then he killed himself. It was a tragedy. It was murder. And he had either separated or divorced from his wife. And
I believe he was separated.
Separated, yeah. Yep. And there was a dispute over custody, and he had tried to take one of the kids and to interstate. So I always listen to the ABC when I'm driving along. Like I listen to the ABC radio. So the way they've framed this ever since it happened was that he had a history of violence.
Yep.
He'd kidnapped one of the children. He was controlling over his wife.
Yep.
And he was just an all-round psychopath.
So basically, he's like every man who has ever challenged his wife when they've separated.
Yes. Except that there are...
Except they're not the real facts, are they?
Yeah, there was a woman who drove her kids into a dam.
Yes.
And there were all these excuses made for her.
Yep.
She wasn't a psychopath. She was somebody who was under severe stress.
Yes.
And acted under severe stress.
Well, what's interesting is that last week in Victoria, a woman was convicted of burning her husband alive.
Yes.
Right? He'd gone to have a nap, and she went in, she poured petrol on him and set him alight, and he died.
I don't remember Lisa Wilkinson going nuts over that.
The outrage
project.
The outrage wasn't there.
Yeah.
The story was reported, and if you read the newspapers, you would have seen it. But if you didn't read the newspapers or see that segment on the news, completely invisible. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not front page news.
Yeah.
And that was murder too.
Yes.
And it's treated completely differently. This is an aberration. This is just something that so random that you couldn't do anything about it. Whereas when a man does it, it's this thing that is obviously this is something that all men are capable of.
And it's inherent in us, apparently.
Yeah.
So what I loved about your piece, you basically made a case of how an ordinary man can be pushed too far, which is the same narrative that gets given to us every time a woman does something like this.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And what I found, and what I'm not going to say interesting, because I knew that this would happen. Like the comments were basically half and half. For XYZ, both on Facebook and on the site. There are people in there who understand where you're coming from. A lot of guys who have experienced domestic violence. And know what the system is like. Also, guys who've experienced marriage rape, divorce rape. Sorry, and they know what happens when you try to challenge the feminist narrative on domestic violence.
Yes.
And then you have everybody else who basically kicks and screams and responds emotionally to what you said and said, how can you say this? How can you blame the victim? La la la.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm really glad that you wrote it, and I followed it up the next day, and you followed it up, which we'll publish tomorrow. But people will already read by the time they listen to this. But basically to point out, look, there's a feminist narrative on domestic violence, which is that all men are evil and violent.
Yeah.
And the system is patriarchal and evil, and reinforces and perpetuates this violence, and we have to destroy the system and replace it with communism. But the thing is that, like, we already live in a feminist system, because if we didn't, we would actually be able to tell the truth about domestic violence.
Well, I slightly disagree, because, and I make this point in the next article that's going to be published on Tuesday, is that there's a philosophy behind the domestic violence laws, and that philosophy is liberalism, and feminism is a branch of liberalism. Most people think of it as its own distinct philosophy, but it's not. All it is the ladies' auxiliary of liberalism.
The auxiliary ring. Yeah.
And what they say is, they basically say, because liberalism says, hey, all men want to be free, right? And feminism says, oh, and women. That's the job of feminism, to say, oh, and women, all right? To extend that franchise, if you will.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
But freedom is a very strange concept, because what they're saying is that there's a particular way to be free. And most people would say, well, freedom's... I know when I'm free. I don't need you to tell me. All right? So there's this very strange connection between what they think of as freedom and what actually is freedom. So when they're talking about domestic violence, they're saying, oh, well, and really in modern society, most domestic violence occurs because of poverty and unemployment. So you can really put that under the framework of hopelessness. So people feel hopeless and they lash out. So there should be mechanisms to deal with that. But instead, it's portrayed as one side is all good and one side is all bad. So that's one of the other aspects of feminism, is feminism basically says no one else will defend women. That's our job. But, and maybe I should have written this in the article. I didn't write it in the article. Feminists didn't make the laws. Liberal men made the laws.
But they were influenced by feminism and feminists.
Or was it the other way around? Was feminism influenced by liberalism? Yes. So basically what they said, all the laws were passed by men, overwhelmingly by men. And those men were liberal men. So when we blame women or we blame feminism, they're the second rank. They're not the people who actually did it. They're the people who are reacting to what has already been put in place.
Which is why traitors are in the lowest circle of hell. Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. And they have betrayed their civilization. They've betrayed their sex, and they've betrayed the family and marriage.
And what both you and I have pointed out is that don't expect anything to change, because like the system is basically what the system encourages is people to go against natural law.
Yes.
Yeah. And then when that happens, don't be surprised when you get explosions as a result.
That's right, because none of these laws take into account human nature.
Yeah.
When human nature and ideology meet, then human nature has to change. It's ideology that is supreme.
Yes. Yeah. Which is why, don't be surprised when men can't see their children and they get portrayed as the bad guys. You have explosions. Don't be surprised if they try to bring in laws that profile all men going through a breakup and want to do police checks on them. It has completely the opposite result to what they think it is going to have. Like
that's exactly right.
I can't think of a better way to make things explode.
Exactly, and then they will use that as an excuse that we have to push harder. That's always the they put a program in place. It fails. they say, oh, the reason it failed is because we didn't put enough money in, we didn't put enough effort in, didn't give it enough time. Hey, let's give it all those things. And it doesn't stop failing. It just continues to fail.
Yeah. They're just going through the problem, reaction, solution loop over and over again.
Yeah. And eventually it will all fail.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's where we come in. That's where we have to be in a position where when it does fail, we can actually do something about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You've got some stories here, which I think
I've got one that I want to go through.
Yeah, they build on what we're talking about.
And it does. It's there's a program in Australia, because I know not everybody who listens to this is Australian, but there's a very popular program called Married at First Sight. So basically what happens is you apply for this reality program and they marry you. Now, the marriages are fake. Right? They're not legal. They go through the ceremony, they have all the normal crap. But it's not real. And then what they do is they live together. So exactly how much they live together, well, I guess only they know. The contestants themselves know. But there's been a bit of a pushback recently. One of the women who left the show has said that she was basically scripted and told what to say.
Yep.
And she was intimidated into, hey, if you don't say this, then all of Australia is going to hate you. Yeah. So, do you want to say your own thing and get hated, or do you want, we're trying to protect you, we're trying to help you.
Yeah.
All right. And of course, that's not what happened. She finished up not being very well liked anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
All right. And so in this case, it was the opposite. The man came off as being the sympathetic character, and she came off as the villainous witch.
So they're deliberately creating good guys and bad guys.
Exactly, and that's the important thing to notice. Not the male female angle, but the heroes and villains. Yeah. So it's all scripted. In one way or another. Yes. And what they do is they put these people together, and then they call it an experiment, a social experiment. And women just love this stuff. And I was at a family party at the weekend, and a number of my nieces were talking about how they loved it and blah, 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 blah. But at the same time were contemptuous of it.
Yes.
Right? Yes. And knowing that it's fake, but still being drawn into that drama.
It's the bread and circuses, isn't it?
Yeah.
The fakeness of it isn't anything new. Being a musician, for a few years I would watch the talent shows that they would have. I can't remember the names of them anymore. They're all just one and the same. But some of the most compelling moments of these shows would be when people who had absolutely no musicality and no clue that they had no musicality would go and sing in front of the judges.
Yep.
And then the judges could just tell them that they were idiots and just destroy them. It was incredibly cruel. And so that's what was shown. But what wasn't shown was that the people who got through to sing in front of the judges had already been through one audition. Where they sang in front of the producers. And so the producers told them, you're great, fantastic, can't wait to put you in front of the judges. So these...
that part was true.
Yeah, these unmusical people, many of whom were often retarded.
Yeah.
Or just have some kind of social
issues. Slow.
Yeah. They would have had producers tell them that they were good, and then have the actual hosts tell them that they were terrible. And so they were manipulated into having these meltdowns on camera, and they just milked it for all it's worth. Yeah. Interestingly, it was a week or two ago, one of the male contestants on Married at First Sight did a talk to camera where he blasted the show's producers, going, "Why did you set me up with this woman?"
Yep.
He described her as being taller than him, tattooed, foul-mouthed, no femininity, which I love, because he's actually going on there reinforcing actual roles of the sexes there, and saying this is what I actually look for in a woman, which is you almost never hear that on television these days, which is great. And this woman, before she'd gone on the show, she had made all these deals with brands, and and to get free stuff, and she'd also got free plastic surgery. And she understood that it could actually give herself brand recognition. So she was selling herself to the country rather than actually going on a show to actually get married. And so if we look at two of the bigger reasons why married at first sight is a thing. Do you remember a few years ago during the Pooh marriage debate?
Yes.
Yeah. One of the arguments that was made was that, what does marriage mean anyway these days? Most marriages end up in divorce. People are onto their second or third marriage. We even have a show on television where people get married at first sight.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And that argument was made. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. The whole point of this show is to just destroy the last...
to destroy the dignity of marriage.
The last little bit of dignity of marriage. Yes.
And see, this is what people don't understand about liberalism, because liberalism believes in freedom, in the autonomous individual. You should be free to do whatever you want. That's why they love transgenderism, because these people are breaking free of this biological restraint. But it's why they hate marriage, because marriage is a bonding between two people, right? And you can't be free and bonded.
According to them. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly. And so ultimately, in a truly liberal society, marriage will not exist.
Yes.
So that's why things like homosexual marriage is so important to them. It's why these reality shows are so important. Why they push them. It's not about bringing men and women together. It's not a dating show. It's about ridiculing the whole idea.
Yes.
It's about saying, hey, see how bad marriage is? See how bad relationships are? You're better single. Don't allow yourself to be in this terrible situation. All right? And it's also why now in Utah, their state senate has passed a polygamy law.
Oh, really?
Yes. So, and that was what we always said. After homosexuality, it's polygamy. Polygamy is the next logical step. And everyone said, oh, no, that will never happen. And here we are.
That's quite interesting.
So, this is the future.
Yes. Yeah, the future is the slippery slope.
Exactly. Liberalism is the slippery slope. Yeah, it really is that simple.
Mind you, we could go off on a tangent here. If it's in Utah, then it's...
We've already done
Mormons.
that episode.
Yeah, if it's in Utah, it's probably Mormons, and it's it'll be blokes having two wives. It won't be wives having two husbands. If it's in Utah.
But you won't be able to put that into the law, saying that only men can have multiple wives. Yeah. It will be anyone can have as many partners as they so choose.
I'll be interested to see if you have.
So people will go from the Burning Man festival straight to Utah, which is the state next door, and get married. And she'll have five husbands.
It's possible, but I think it's in this case it's actually more likely that you'll have hardcore Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons doing this and having 15 white children. So in this one particular case...
No. Do not pretend that this is a good thing. This is an absolute abomination.
Yes. Because
what happens to the men who can't get wives?
Oh, well, they're
fucked.
Yeah.
That's what happens. Yeah. That's why polygamy is evil.
Yeah.
That's why it cannot be tolerated at all.
Okay.
And I would rather that 15 husbands and 15 wives had a total of 15 children than one man had 15 wives and had a child with each of them.
You are right. I'm glad we dealt with that.
Yeah. Now, where can people find out more of your thinking?
The XYZ. Come to the xyz.net.au. Bypass Facebook because Facebook is dying. You can, if you really want, you can come visit us on Gab and Telegram. And and you'll hear me chat with Maddie, Maddie's Modern Life on Monday nights at 9:15 Australian Eastern Standard Time on Maddie Rose Live, and the Uncuckables, which we're going to get you on eventually, on Thursday nights at 8:30 p.m.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And I'm Mark Moncrief, and you can find out more of my thinking at Upon Hope. Just type that into your favourite search engine, or look in the information bar below, and you can find out all you need to there. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good week.